Today's video is going to be on magnets. Our lesson objectives from this video are to learn what are magnets, explain magnetic fields and force, and examples of objects in everyday life that use magnets. So what is a magnet? Well, it's an object or material that produces a magnetic field. Most magnets have two poles, a north pole and a south pole, and there's a lovely picture of a bar magnet clearly indicating the north and the south poles. The field runs from the north pole to the south pole, so we can illustrate this via field lines. So we see our picture, we have field lines going from the north to the south with arrows indicating the direction. And now that's 100% true for all magnets, north to south. How do magnets interact? Well, magnets, or more precisely their magnetic fields, can interact with each other. If you place two magnets with the opposite poles next to each other, they will attract each other. So a north and a south will attract, drawing the two magnets together. Yet if you place them with the same poles next to each other, they will repel each other. So two norths pushed together will cause a repulsion, and two souths pushed together will also cause a repulsion. This is due to their field lines and the interactions of their fields, because we know our field lines always go north to south. So with the opposite poles, the field lines work together and draw the magnets together, but with the same poles, they force each other apart. This is an example of a magnetic force, and we use magnetic force in many different ways in everyday life. So what materials can interact with magnets? Well, magnets can attract different substances, typically other metals. Yet not all the metals are magnetic. Some naturally are not magnetic and will not interact with a magnet. The most common example is aluminium. Now, aluminium cans, if you put them next to a magnet, will not affect them. You cannot pick them up using a magnet. So it's one really interesting way we can use it when we're doing stuff like recycling, so we can separate out the non-magnetic metals. A common example or a magnetic metal is iron. Iron will react with your magnet. You can pick up a iron can or a tin can using a magnet. Most magnets, actually like the bar magnets we saw illustrated earlier, are actually made of iron. Iron is a very magnetic metal. So which objects in everyday life use magnets? We use magnets in many different ways, and many of which are a type of magnet called electromagnets. And we'll do a little bit about electromagnets later. So here are some good examples. Electric motors. Electric motors use magnets to create motion. Compasses. It points north, so we can determine which direction we are going. Electric doorbells. These use electromagnets to create a motion of the hammer hitting the gong or the bell, creating literally the ringing sound. Maglev trains. These trains use repulsion and attraction of magnets to move along tracks. The fact is they're using these, they kind of float, and they can go a lot faster because it reduces the friction. They're really cool. What else produces magnetic fields? Well, an important idea with electromagnets is the fact when electricity flows through wires, it produces a magnetic field. is relatively weak, but there are ways we can increase the strength. We can increase the current in the wires. We can coil the wire. We can increase the number of coils. Or we could use an iron core and convert it into a solenoid. So we have a lovely diagram there illustrating how the magnetic field is affected when we coil the wire. One end will act as the south pole and one end will act as the north pole. All depends on which direction the current is moving at a given time. And obviously, the longer the piece of wire and the more coils, the stronger this field will be. Why do compasses work? Well, a compass has a piece of magnetic metal called the needle. We can see it illustrated here. It has a north and a south, so literally it is a magnet, and it's suspended in the middle so it can move easily. And the needle will always point north as it's attracted to the opposite pole of the magnet. So if we put a compass next to an electrical wire, it will point towards the north pole of that wire. But in the case of compasses, when we mainly use it, this is the magnetic field produced by the Earth that we're reacting to. So the Earth is a giant magnet. It has a north pole and a south pole. But how does the Earth produce a magnetic field? Well, it's mainly down to the motion and currents in the molten outer core of the Earth. If we looked at the structure of the Earth, we'd see there's many different layers. The central layer is called the core. This is made up of two parts. The inner core is solid iron, and the outer core is a molten iron and nickel mix. And this continuously moves, and currents are created in this. And those currents, with the rotation of the Earth, create the magnetic fields, and so set up our magnetic north and south. And our magnetic field of Earth is very interesting, and it's very important for the survival of everything on Earth. But we'll go into that at a later date. And that is the end of our introduction to magnets. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something. Any comments or questions, please feel free to ask. And until next time, stay safe.